Twins Fest is next week. Do you know where your beat reporter is for MLB.com? Well, we do. Before we introduce Matthew Leach, let's get locked on Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to destination for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. Personally, it's my favorite of the Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team every day. I'm co-host Dave Brown, a professional ball writer since 1998, a BBWA member since 2012, and a Baseball Hall of Fame voter for a second straight year. Please follow me on Twitter at @AnswerDaveBrown if you like. You can also find me possibly on Blue Sky simply by wishing Answer Dave into the ether, like some kind of genie. I don't know. Across cyberspace for me, we also bring you Brandon Warren, a Twins watcher for about 30 years, who has spent a lot of time covering the team professionally as well. He asks that you submit your great trades for Derek Falvey at Brandon_Warren on Twitter. He's also on Blue Sky, where he's simply known as Warren. On this podcast, we have something special again for the listeners or the viewers. Another special guest. We had Dan Szymborski on the other day to talk about ZiPS, statistical projections. And today we bring you Mr. Matthew Leach, who is moving in as the MLB.com reporter for the Twins. Do-Hyun Park has moved to software developer, and he's basically going to run StatCast as far as we know. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. Welcome, Matthew. How are you doing on this mid to late January day?
Well, it's 58 here in Athens, Georgia, so I'm doing great. I am very much looking forward to the 9 months of the year when Minnesota is not Georgia, and not looking forward to the other 3 months of the year when Minnesota is not Georgia. That balance may be 5 or 6, I realize, but I'm telling myself it's 9 and 3.
Well,
but yeah, I'm excited.
I just want to interject. It's 35 here in Minnesota.
Okay. I can live with that.
The Northwest Metro. It is going to be negative about that in about 24 hours. So it's quite a swing coming up. So you're getting us at a good time.
Can't wait.
And before we go any deeper with Matthew about the Twins and his place in the Twins universe, Brandon, do you have anything to tell us about who is bringing us this episode?
I sure do. Good afternoon, sports fans. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Gametime, Locked On MLB. Download that app. And Matthew, have you ever met Stu Thornley?
I don't believe I have.
So he's kind of a legend around here. He is the official scorer. You'll know he's coming he's on a little scooter because he had bad issues with his hips. His thing before every game, and I think he still does it, I haven't covered a game now in a little while, is to say, good evening, sports fans, and then introduce, game time temperature and everything. He does it as kind of a little gag. So I'm doing that in his honor, because he's one of my favorite baseball types. You will know once you've met him, and you will never forget him.
I absolutely love a press box icon. As somebody who has covered games, for example, at both Chicago parks, I love a press box icon. Each of us has their own. So
in his drinking days, he climbed I think it was the left field foul pole at Metropolitan Stadium. He has been sober for a long time now, but you will find there's no shortage of stories about him. And that's just one character that I think you should be excited to meet in the press box. It's a fun press corps. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I definitely get that impression. I know a couple of the everyday beats already. Some folks I've known for a while. And yeah, I mean, look, I love a press box, and there's a whole lot that goes into this move, and a whole lot that went into getting as far away from baseball writing as I did. But one big part of it is that I just genuinely feel at home in a press box. I love it every time I walk into one. Even last year, when I was as far from baseball writing as I have ever been, I covered a few games, and I go into Atlanta or Vinings, I suppose, technically, and walk into the press box and just be like, yeah, I feel good here. I feel right here. So that's one thing that I genuinely love. I love being around ball writers and baseball people.
So while Matthew is new to the Twins beat, as you maybe at home have gleaned, He's not new to sports writing, not new to baseball writing. From 2002 to 2012, he was the Cardinals reporter for MLB.com. He moved to national reporter for a couple of years after that. And for the past 11 years or so, he's been at an editor level and a manager level at MLB.com. Matthew, the first question I have for you is, how has all of that experience informed you as you transition back into reporter for the Twins?
I think it's going to be really helpful. So I fundamentally had two different roles since I was no longer a ball writer. And one was actually managing beat reporters. That was what I did for the bulk of that time, from the end of 2013 through 21, I think. I managed MLB.com beat reporters. And so, I think that really gives me a much better understanding of the stakes here, in a really good way. I think I'm just going to be healthier about it. I think I'm going to be saner about it. I think that I'm going to have a much better understanding that this is not war journalism, and you've got to love it, which I always did. I've always loved it, but you got to understand that this is not the end of the world. You've got to take the work seriously. You've got to respect your readers. You've got to respect the people you cover. But you can't worry too much about it. And so I think that there's a perspective that comes from having helped other ball writers understand that. And I think the other thing is that, again, the kind of perspective aspect of it, when you are in it and the game doesn't give you anything, it's really, and sometimes the game doesn't give you anything, man. Sometimes, if you've done this for a while, sometimes the game is just a stinker, even in a win. Sometimes the game just doesn't give you anything to work with. And when you're in there and it's all you've been doing, it just feels like it's terrible. And you get frustrated and you get irritated. And I spent 7 or 8 years with a big part of my job telling people in that spot, hey, you know what? There's another game tomorrow. Do the best you can with it. Find something interesting. Find something fun. And so I think that's really valuable. And I think just generally, one, again, managing people, I think will help me manage myself. But also just sort of understanding what we are doing as an organization. And I have seen what MLB.com does as an organization from a whole variety of different perspectives. And I think that helps too. So I think I'm going to be in some ways, a much, much better ball writer than I was 13 years ago, which is just amazing.
It's amazing how it's gone by fast, and it seems like a million years ago and like yesterday at the same time. It's very strange.
Yes.
I want to know, this might be a difficult question to answer. I've filled in before at MLB.com. It was never a full-time thing, but I would do a series here or a series there. So I know that what is expected of you and what you expect of yourself at MLB.com is a little different than what, say, Dan Hayes or Betsy Helflin or Bobby Nightingale does with the newspaper. How is your job different than the other people on the beat?
I think that it is less different than it maybe used to be. Mm-hmm. I think that, there are two different things that question can mean. And so I'll kind of try and touch on both of them. And I'll maybe touch on the one that used to be a lot more sensitive than it is now first, which is sort of from a tone approach perspective. And I think the difference to me, the way I always saw it in St. Louis, the difference between what I do and what somebody writing for a newspaper does from a tone approach audience perspective is, if you are coming to I'm old enough that I still think of it as twinsbaseball.com. If you're coming to twins.com, you are very likely a Twins fan. And if you are reading on the Star Tribune or the Pioneer Press, you are not necessarily a Twins fan. You are a person who lives in that area who is interested. And so that does not mean soft pedal. It doesn't mean don't ask the questions that need to be asked. It absolutely does not mean those things, but it means an awareness that you are talking almost exclusively to people who really, really care about the team. And so one of the things, and I'm not saying these folks do it because I don't think they do. I think this is more a columnist thing. But sometimes, the newspaper will sort of take a little pleasure in sort of, and again, if you're a beat writer, that's a different matter because you got to face these people the next day. I get that. But sometimes you have a little fun with tone. Sometimes a columnist will do an I told you so, or will sort of revel in something going wrong. And I've got to address it when things go wrong. And I've got to ask the questions and help you understand when things go wrong. But I'm not here to sort of be like, haha, your team lost. And I think sometimes you get a little of that from a columnist. So that's part of it. And I think that, ultimately there's very little that we're not gonna cover, and the other part of that is, if we're being real honest here, is that everybody has bosses, and even people whose credential doesn't say MLB.com have bosses at some level who care about what goes on their website. So, fundamentally, I don't think the mission, the tone is as different as, one, maybe people think it is, but maybe they don't think that anymore. And two, as it probably actually was and certainly appeared to be 20 years ago. The second part of that is from a work perspective, is from what I'm actually doing. And I think that as years go by, we're kind of all converging on a similar model. I think that the people who cover the team every day, you look at what The Athletic does, and they were really kind of at about a similar time to us, though I think we held to a more structured approach for a longer time, sort of started getting away from feeling a need to write every game. Now, if I'm at the park, I'm gonna write. And if I'm covering a game, I'm gonna write it. But I'm not gonna write gamer anymore. And I hate that. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I miss it. I loved writing gamers. I was good at writing gamers. I like reading a good gamer, man. Reading a really good gamer is just such a joy. But nobody reads game stories. They know what happened. They saw it on TV or on their phone or in a highlights package. And so they know what happened, and we don't need to tell them what happened anymore. And so what we need to tell them is why they should care, or what it means, or how it happened. And so, fundamentally, I think we are all moving away from telling you what happened in the game and moving towards trying to help you understand why it matters and why you should care. And so, I actually don't know if those folks still do daily notebooks. We don't. We have an injuries and roster moves updates page that I update when there's an injury or a roster move or news about one of those things. But I think on some level, even as the industry as a whole, the industry of journalism, the industry of sports journalism, there are certainly some distressing trends within it at a tip-top level. I think on the level of people who are doing the job every day, I think we're all learning a lot of the same things. And what we're learning, again, is that what happened, and you want us to make you smarter about what happened and entertain you. And if something unusual or weird or fun happens, write that. But I think that we have all on some level moved away from accounting for every run in a 7-4 game and pointing to this pitching change and these runs here. And instead it's what's the thing that you need to know from that game? And like I said, I think we've really focused on that for a long time now, but I also just think as a whole, people who cover baseball, who do it sincerely, who do it every day and are not just, amalgamating and aggregating, people who actually cover the game, I think we kind of are learning similar lessons over time.
We are talking with Matthew Leach, who's the new Twins writer for MLB.com. He'll be with the team most every day. And I think, are we going to take a break here at this point, Brandon? We'll take a break, and when we get back, we'll talk more with Matthew about what he expects from this season and in general as the new Twins beat writer.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. And one of my favorite memories was attending a concert just this last year. The energy and excitement were unforgettable at US Bank Stadium when I saw Metallica. Mammoth opened for them. It was incredible. Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming Timberwolves game using the Gametime app. With Gametime Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before I bought. Plus, the super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time.
We are back talking with Matthew Leach, new Twins reporter for MLB.com. Brandon, you said that you had a question you wanted to ask.
Yeah, so you've been out of the reporting day-to-day game for a little while now. What made this opportunity the one for you to throw your hat back into the ring? Because, you know, I look at the Cardinals and their fan base and everything, and I feel like in a lot of ways the Twins should want to be that team. I mean, it's a team that spends sometimes but develops. It's got a ravenous fan base. I feel like the Twins should want to be who the Cardinals are at large. How did you decide, though, that this was going to be your next opportunity?
I mean, there are a lot of moving parts that go into that. Some of which are not necessarily worth getting into. I think that what makes this something I am particularly excited about is I'm 50. I don't want to cover the Dodgers. I don't want to cover the Yankees. That doesn't mean I'm lazy. It just means that there's a consuming nature to those beats that doesn't exist elsewhere. But, I probably also don't want to cover, well, I'm not going to call anybody out, but you can probably figure which 3 or 4 or 5 teams that nobody cares about. And that's not fair because every team's got fans and those fans care a lot, right? Like whatever team you want to take a shot at, that team does in fact have fans and those people care a lot. But I do really like, one of the things you mentioned, St. Louis, I think, when you're in this business, I think you think and talk a lot about fans, fan bases, fan cultures. And I don't want to go too far off a tangent here, but I think ultimately most fans are the same and most fan bases are the same. And I think they all have lunatic fringes and they all have some wonderful diehards and they all have some casuals. I think what makes what I would consider baseball cities different is not actually how avid the fans are. It's how broad-based it is. And that's what I loved in St. Louis and what you find, I think, in New York, in Chicago, in Boston, and I think to some extent in the Twin Cities is the breadth of it, is that just like everybody's kind of interested. And that I think is what you don't find everywhere, right? Like I think that there are markets where the baseball fans care and the average sports fan doesn't know what's going on with the baseball team. And the impression I get is that it's a market that overall there are a lot of people who are interested, who follow, who care. I also think I get the impression that it's just a really good organization. It's an organization, everybody I've talked to says you're going to love covering these guys. You're going to love working you're going to love the guys in the clubhouse. You're going to love the manager. You're going to love the front office, that just overall, these are going to be good people to cover. And look, and you touched on this a little bit. You guys touched on this a little bit at the beginning. Who you cover a team with matters a ton. There is, for 8 months, I'm going to see the other beat reporters maybe more than I see my wife, right? Like the other beat reporters and the manager in particular, you're going to have more interactions with than anyone. It is a weird, special, sometimes tense bond. And covering a beat with people is not like anything else. And there are places where even if I like the individuals, there is a culture to the beat that I want no part of. I don't want people who want each other to fail. I'm just not interested in that. And I get it, but I want to compete by being better at what I do, not by you failing. And I very much get the impression that to the extent there is any competitiveness within this group, it is to be the best at what each individual person does. And that I find very appealing. And also, look, purely, look, the winters are going to be an adjustment, but every time I have been to the Twin Cities, I really like it. It is a place that I feel comfortable. It's a place that I've enjoyed going. It's a great ballpark. The travel's reasonable. There are a lot of ways I feel like there's a real short list of beats where like the overall quality of life would be better than this one.
Yeah, summers are great. The organization's great. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this in any other beat, but at least when I was still going to games, it's been a little while since I've done that, we would break up big transcriptions to where if you had an hour, we'd go, okay, you take 12 minutes, you take 12 minutes, you take 12 minutes. We all send it in. And there's a lot of collaboration and not a lot of competition on the beat.
Yeah. And I want to preface this by saying, rest Joe Strauss's soul. I genuinely loved working with Joe Strauss. I learned a ton from Joe Strauss. Joe and I didn't do that. I can assure you, Joe and I didn't do that. And again, I want to be really clear. Joe was a huge influence to me, a friend, somebody I held in incredibly high regard, but that was not how it was during my years in St. Louis.
Yeah. It's a fun beat. Rocco is very zen, very thoughtful. And again, I couldn't say enough good things about covering the team on a daily basis because it's they take care of you. Now things will change. Ownership's going to change and all that stuff. But what I also want to most prepare you for, and I've done this with Dave over the last year, is there are a lot of inside jokes and bits and little Twitter things that you'll kind of pick up on as time goes on. Yep. And if you need a sounding board, Dave or I can definitely help you with what most of those things mean.
Excellent.
Your first lesson is... I
bet I've already been told it, but...
Great trade, Falvey.
Oh, okay.
So anytime a former Twin does anything, and this is if a Twin from 1992 gets caught for tax evasion, someone will quote tweet it, great trade, Falvey. And it's just a thing because Twins fans lament former Twins more than any other fan base I've ever seen. It's the David Ortiz factor. So like if Spencer Steer hits a home run for the Reds, great trade, Falvey. Like it's a thing. And so Dave and I both use it quite frequently on the show. But if you see great trade or nice trade, Falvey,
gotcha.
With a thumbs up emoji, that's it.
So without, and I want to be abundantly clear here, without making any partisan endorsements, it's equivalent to thanks Obama. Do I understand?
Yeah. I would say,
it is a baseball thanks Obama.
It's a good analogy.
I've been trying to make thanks Mo Bamba happen on the NBA side, and it's not picking up any traction. So it's pretty tough.
I was actually told that the first thing I had to know was that Ron Gant was out.
Ron Gant was clearly out.
Okay, I was told that was the first thing I had to know. So
there's also this thing about Whit Merrifield being out, and I don't know. I still don't know exactly what it means, but lots of people on Twins Twitter refer to Whit Merrifield being out.
This is the game where Tim Beckham was playing left field, which means already things have gone sideways. And so there was a fly ball to left. Beckham caught it through home. Gary Sanchez applies the tag. They call him out. The Blue Jays appeal. I think their manager is the one they still have, the red-faced younger guy. I can't remember his name now.
John Snyder.
Yeah, there you go. And they ended up getting it reversed on blocking the plate. And Rocco, the most calm, like fish fan, chill dude, lost his freaking mind over it. And so that is, it's particularly triggering to a specific member of Twins Twitter named Shayla. So just keep an eye out. She's wonderful, but that will trigger her in ways you would not imagine. And it was that Whit Merrifield was out. And if you find that play, I think you'll agree.
Noted.
Yes.
Hey, can you shed... I know this is not like the Doe Park exit show, but can you shed a little light on, since you were with him at MLB.com, why he left the beat to go to the development side?
I don't know a lot about the why. I mean, I think anybody who knows Doe knows that he's one of the most brilliant humans you will ever come across. Like, that's just one smart dude.
Yep.
So I suspect that the challenge of working with StatCast was really compelling. The other thing I will say, because I got to this point when I was, let's do the math here, 37. Preface to this is, if you wake up every day excited to go to the park, covering baseball is the best job in the world. I love the work with all my heart. With that said, it is grueling to cover a team every day, to hit, platinum with your hotel super chain of choice every year. One of the things that used to happen to me my first year on the beat, 2002, which was an incredibly draining year. Google 2002 Cardinals for details.
Yeah.
I got to the end of the year and finished covering the NLCS. I did not cover the World Series that year. And truly thought I had the flu. I just felt weak and sore and achy. Like, if it had been 20 years later, I would have thought I had COVID because of that kind of just like, I have nothing. I felt just physically destroyed. And then the same thing happened again the next year. And I realized I learned something really valuable, which is as long as your brain keeps telling your body to go, your body will keep going. It will just keep going. It'll be like, all right, boss, got it. We got to keep going. We keep going. Okay. The second your brain says, okay, you can let down now, your body's like, got it. And so I realized that what 8 months of covering a team does to you is when you finally let up, you're just done. And you need days to recuperate. And so without knowing for sure, I can tell you that at some point you kind of get enough. As great as the job is, at some point, the travel, being away from home, the being away from the people you care about, the having your life dictated by the schedule of a team, stuff's hard. And you make a lot of sacrifices, and the people you care about, and this in my case is particularly strong, the people you care about make a lot of sacrifices for you to do this thing you love. And so if you can do something else that you love either almost as much or just as much in a different way and not have it consume your life in the same way, I am extremely sympathetic to making that decision.
Good for Joe that he is capable in another area that is still adjacent to baseball.
Yeah.
That will keep him close to it and help him do something in baseball that isn't necessarily what he was doing before. So we should all be so lucky. What did you want to do when you grew up? Is this what you wanted to do?
No. Well, of course, for a while I wanted to be a ball player. And for a while, I wanted to be Keith Richards, and some of those kinds of things. When I was in high school and most of college, I thought I was going to be an academic. I thought I was going to be a history professor, and ended up studying sociology instead, because of really sort of like choosing of classes reasons, honestly. And even as I was a senior in college, thought that what I would be doing the next year was going to grad school, and visited with a professor of mine who basically said, you really need to take some time because, and this is going somewhere, I swear, because grad school is hard in a way that nothing else you've ever done is. And I know this because my wife just got her PhD. So I saw this firsthand. Grad school is hard in a way that nothing else you've ever done is hard. And if you are only there because it's the default, because it's what you just assumed you were going to do, at some point you're going to wake up and be like, man, the hell with this. Right. And if you've taken some time away and decided that this is really what I want to do, then you get through those times better. So I took that to heart, and in writing a senior honors thesis, realized that I really did need some time away from school. Was at what you'd now call ESPN.com, ESPN Net Sports Zone, for those of us who are very old.
Oh, yeah.
To NASCAR.com. And really, even then, thought I was going to be an editor. And there's a whole separate anecdote about how I ended up on a beat. But in about my second or third year on a beat was when I realized not only was this a fun job, but this was actually my career. Like, oh, yeah, I'm a ball writer. And really, from that point, thought I'd be a ball writer for my whole life. I thought that I would go from a beat to being a national writer, and national writer was what I was going to do. And then after a year and a half, we had somebody leave. I had to step in, and my entire path was changed.
What do you want Twins fans to know about you at the outset of your taking over of this role?
That this is fun. This really is fun. I think, the phrase, and I don't, I'm always hesitant. I had a writing teacher who said, take your favorite line out of everything you write. It's a little like the Sophia Loren advice about dressing, but I think it's really smart. I didn't do that with my introductory newsletter. I am not an attack dog, but I'm also not a lap dog. I think fundamentally that is my approach. Is I am not, the people who say, why don't you ask the tough questions? What they actually mean is, why don't you go scorched earth? And I am going to ask tough questions, but tough questions in the space of dealing with humans on an everyday basis is not the same as what some people think tough questions are, which is, why are you such an idiot? No, I'm not going to ask that, So, what I think I want people to know is a lot of what I laid out in that introductory newsletter, which is, this is fun. I enjoy this. I want you to enjoy this. I take it seriously. And my responsibilities are to the people I cover, the people my bosses, and you, the reader. And I take all of those really seriously. And so it's that line. It's that line of, I love this. And I do it because I love it. But it's also a job. But like, it's too hard to do it if it's not enjoyable. It's just too draining. It's too much to do if you don't love it. And so we should have fun here. We should, like I said, this is not war journalism. This is baseball.
Last one, I think. Is there one thing, is there a topic or a person that you are eager to learn about with the Twins? I don't know if you're that far along in your preparation for the season.
A couple. I mean, look, I will be honest. Like, I don't want to give away my my first.
Yeah.
A guy who may not make the roster, but like when they traded for Mickey Gasper, I was like, this dude looks fascinating. Like, I want to sit down and get this guy's story, but I don't think that's really what you're getting at. What I don't know and want to understand is really the philosophical stuff, because it's very clear this is a really smart organization, and that the baseball ops people are very good at what they do and have a way of doing it. And one of the things that I think has really changed in 13 and a half years, whatever it is that not only the data that the clubs have is so much more, but what they are able to do with it is so much more. And I know I won't actually understand the data, but what I really want to understand is what they're looking for, what are the tendencies when they find somebody that they think they can do something with. What does that mean? What do they think? What are the things they think they can fix? What are the things they think they can emphasize? Those kinds of things I think are kind of what differentiate clubs. And so, and then in relation to that, also, man, I've just got to learn a lot of stuff about covering the game, man. I don't understand tunneling, right? Like, I mean, I understand the concept of it. Fundamentally, I understand the concept of it. But like 15 years ago, I was a stat nerd among ball writers. 15 years ago, I was kind of one of not a prospectus full on the front lines, but among people covering a team every day, I was as stat heady as it got. I was as prospectus friendly, as data friendly as anybody you could find who was, there we go, outstanding.
Hardcover.
I just packed all of mine, and I think I have every one but 97. So that's the kind of nerd you're talking about here. And so one of the things, and this is not specifically about the team, but like, I'm going to have to kind of, one, get up to speed on some of that, and two, come to terms with knowing that, like, I'm not going to have that exact club in my bag anymore. I'm not going to be that person who is helping you understand the stats, because, man, I got to learn them myself. So getting up to speed on what the team values, identifies, how it looks at players, and then related to that, getting up to speed on what those tools actually are really the things that I kind of need to learn.
I think Twins fans are really going to like having Matthew Leach on the beat.
Yep.
I think this episode will help them introduce themselves to him. And we thank him for coming with us today and sharing a little bit of himself as we prepare for the 2025 season. Matthew, thank you for taking some time to say who you are to the Twins fans.
Absolutely. Thanks, guy. Thanks, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. This was fun, and I hope everybody enjoys the playlist. Go listen to all those songs, because I actually listen to them. So,
There you go. Yeah, start listening right now. So for Matthew and Brandon, this is Dave Brown, wishing you all a very pleasant good evening, and saying we will Alexei see ya tomorrow night. Do, 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 do.